Hey there, if this is our first time meeting, I'm Kenny here with Jeremy, and welcome to Small Talks Radio, where we just talk about things that we feel like on the basis of our whim. So the question for today is that if is anything actually arbitrary?
Yeah, talk about on a whim. This is just something that I've been thinking about over the past several weeks, months, something like that. I don't know if people still think like this. I'm pretty sure they do. Arbitrary is this word that would get tossed around all the time, mostly as this kind of, I guess, deflection against any notion that things had like kind of an intrinsic meaning to them. And I don't want to engage this too deeply, but I do want to attack this with some philosophical precision because the frustrating part about the word arbitrary is like, what does it mean? Presumably, this is the idea that something is based like totally on a whim, right? Or there's no structure behind it, there's no reasoning behind it. It's just it's chosen at random, and random is related to this. When you say something is random, it just kind of like spontaneously came out of nowhere, and maybe that's the nihilism sitting under all this. All of this is just from nowhere. It's all meaningless. Whatever. All of these statements that I'm throwing out, by the way, are not the same exact thing, and that's the frustrating part about this. When you say something is arbitrary, what exactly do we mean by that? And I don't think that really anything is arbitrary the way that we mean it exactly, or the way that many people do. What could we actually call arbitrary? One of the things that brought this up and that brought this to my attention, I had a friend who was telling me about this thing. Have we talked about this before? Have we talked about cottagecore before? Does this sound familiar?
Cottagecore? No.
I love bringing this up. So cottagecore is this like trend, this style, whatever it is, where you basically just like someone maybe not lives in a cottage is a weird way to put it, but you'll have like, think of like the American Midwest with like the full summer dresses and they're floral, and or maybe you have like kind of suspenders on or something like this. I think it is a more feminine thing, but basically you're dressing like a farmer's daughter or something like that. And it's attractive, it's nice, it's endearing, especially if you like stuff like Little House on the Prairie and everything that goes with that. And I brought this up and I was like, what did I say? It said something like, oh, you got to start carrying a basket instead of a purse. And she was like, no, it's just style. It doesn't mean anything. You just do it because it looks cool. And I was like, that's not why they dress that way. I mean, like, sure, like the flowers on a dress or something, maybe those don't have much of a function to it, but like the other things that will come with the cottagecore style, most of those are very functional. Why would they wear suspenders or like overalls? That's what I'm thinking of. Where were they getting their baskets from, for example? None of this was arbitrary in that as a style, because we're not living in that place. So we can say that looks cool, I want to be like that, but without taking on also like the culture that produced those things, because for them all of those decisions were meaningful. Even like a dress that goes down to your ankles. That was that kind of modesty. That was expected, and it was important. There was a moral behind that. And so if you put on that dress, are you endorsing that same type of moral? There's good things in that either way. But like to dress like that, you're aligning yourself with the culture. Not just like it's not arbitrary. It can't be arbitrary like that. It didn't come from an arbitrary situation. They lived a certain way, and so the style follows after it. And this goes with anything else. So are morals arbitrary? Do we really just have arbitrary social structures? If we were getting like really dicey, we could bring up gender and stuff like here. What's actually arbitrary? And I don't think anything is. I think it's one thing to say that.
So you're claiming that there's nothing that is arbitrary in nature? It's just the word that we use to describe something that's not what it is defined?
So let's see, not something. Yeah, I would say that it doesn't exist in nature. I don't think it's something that, well, all things considered, nothing can be. Like what's actually random? Ask a computer programmer how hard it is to make something that's actually random. Random's not easy.
For example, if you have a dice, you can roll 1 to 6, and the chances of you getting that specific number is random, but I understand because like the way I think about it is that even though you can run, even though the chances are randomized, right? There's a set of there's no guarantee that something's going to pop up, but everything's within confine or rules. For example, a die it would have to be between 1 to 6. It can't be like 2.3. So in that sense, I guess there's no like actual randomness to it. But I think random and arbitrary is a little different, no?
That's exactly what I'm saying. So a random I'm fine with, even if we should probably qualify that because so if you have integers from 1 to 6 and it's going to be one of those things, you've put parameters on it and that's going to produce certain results. But when we get down to like nature and like what's actually random, throw the dice. The number is going to depend on the position of the dice when it left your hand and the amount of force you threw it. It's not actually random. We just don't have the mental capacity to predict what's actually going to happen. And so we'll use things like probability, but that doesn't mean that the universe itself is rolling its own dice. There's, we call them laws of nature, and those sort of govern what the way that things play out. But, even though they're not actually laws, like, they're consistencies. And that's not random. It's not actually random. It's not true random. And so I guess that's what I'm trying to say. We can use the word random like, okay, it's impossible for us to predict. Fine. We can call that random. Or, we use probability to predict these types of things. Maybe there's a randomness in that, but it's not actually random. And in the same way, we're not going to actually have anything that's arbitrary either. Go ahead.
So what about like mutations, for example? Like I guess when we see evolution or whatever, it is based on what survived, which mutations that carried over. But I guess like the reasons why those mutations carried over is because they served a specific need or they served a benefit of some sort, and that's why they are carried on. And people might call that random, but that's not really random because it's kind of chosen by nature or whatever. But the fact, but in order for that to be selected, there had to be numerous amount of I wouldn't say defects, but mutations that occur, and those specific mutations itself might be random, right? Because they're not pre-planned beforehand.
That's the thing is, what would make it random if, again, we just don't have the tests to go through and say, all right, this is how all the mutations play out. If we have this set of DNA and this set of DNA and they interact in these ways, then this is what we'll see happen. We don't have the processing power for that. We don't have those powers of observation. But just because we can't observe it doesn't mean that it's random or arbitrary for that matter. And I guess that's the point that I'm trying to make. Observation, our capacity to observe, does not render something random or determined. All of it you can trace back if your powers of observation are good enough. But we're sorely limited as human beings, even with all our tools of science and technology. If that makes sense.
I think I want to share a little example. For example, like people do stupid things, not all the time, but when we see those stupid things, we usually call them call that person or that act random, right? Do you know what I'm trying to say, or have you heard that before? So why is that person being so random? Like, for example, we have a conversation and someone just randomly butts in and says something that's irrelevant to what we're talking about. We're like, oh, that's so random. But is it actually random? For the fact that they brought it up, they thought it was probably relevant, but we didn't. So by the fact that we say something that's random, it just means it's a word of I guess what do you call it? It's like it's the easy word to describe what's not desirable per se.
Maybe. So what I was thinking, what you were describing is like something that's apparently unrelated. Like
right. It's a word for saying something like that, even though, but like if you look closely enough, even though we didn't find it relevant, maybe that other person found it relevant, even though if they're not aware of it, somewhere in their mind, subconsciously, they brought it up because there was a trigger for them to bring that into the conversation. Because with even them without like actively knowing or doing it on their own, on their own accord, or it's just happened, but something told them that they should bring it up because they found some significance to what we're talking about, even though it's I guess it has nothing to do with the context. And
apparently unrelated.
Yeah, like it seems like it's unrelated. That's why I say that. But somehow like something triggered that person to say something, and that causal, yeah, something that caused them to do
Whatever
it.
that.
Even though we don't see it, it's related somehow. So that
Yeah, it doesn't mean
actually
that it's not there.
exactly
Yeah,
because we don't know it. That's yeah.
and even when they're trying to be random, was the thing. I want to say this has been like 8th grade or something like that. So something like 2004, 2005, whatever. Like it was just cool and funny to be random, whatever that meant. But when you looked at that humor, like it was all fairly predictable. It was a certain set of food items. I feel like I heard the word spork a whole lot. Certain set of animals, and it's not random. It's unrelated. And it's kind of bizarre and surrealist, but it's not random. Like there's technical meanings to these things, and if you take those meanings away, then what's the point? Right. Figure out other ways to describe what your humor actually is, and well, that's really important for understanding the world around us, because the big problem that comes from all this is when we have this imprecision of thought, whether if it's just in humor, like it shapes the way that we think the world around us. Now we have a culture that exists the way it does. Because its definitions of these words are kind of like, they're based on past experiences that are underlying every definition, every way we think about it, and that means that we've got a lot more to combat than just philosophical treatises. It's a lot of work to do.
So I guess after this pandemic's over or something, when people start gathering or talking, I guess. Is it fair to say that some of us will be I wouldn't say grammar police, but it's instead of grammar, what would like the meaning behind the word, what is do you have a word for that?
Interesting.
It escaped my mind.
The meaning, or you could use some other technical terms like connotation or denotation
or something, yeah,
like
but
that.
for a word like the meaning of the word to know that it's correct, and we should police those people saying, so every time they say, oh, that's random, they're not being random. It can be like, oh, you mean irrelevant, we can police people that way.
Oh yeah, what do we want to call it? Yeah,
yes,
irrelevant. Maybe that's a good way to put it. I don't know. It's not doesn't seem to be a cultural movement that has the force that it used to have. So, but yeah, either way, I
mean, if there's grammar Nazis, there should be a different,
somebody that's out to
exactly.
Well, these are the people that are, they're kind of like, oh, well, actually, and I think well, actually has a good, has already got a reputation going for itself. Or we can take another approach and call it like mansplaining or something like that. That's a little bit different.
That's something else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
now we're all conflating our own. That's the thing. You just gotta yeah, something that we can throw at other people, because that's what we want to do. We just want to cause chaos in the world and make people disagree and be unhappy with each other. Basically, just make it the whole place culturally uninhabitable. That's our goal here. But not really. All right. With that said, I believe that's all we have time for today. And so until next time, have a good week. Happy Monday night.
Take care.